Troy Worthen, Warrior Grappler for One Championship MMA. Troy, thank you so much. Tell us, how are you doing with all this coronavirus stuff that's going on? Gosh.
I mean, you might have a future in announcing events. That was a pretty good introduction there. But honestly, the coronavirus outbreak hasn't really affected my daily life at all. We pretty much are still doing exactly what we do. We just are a little more sensible and making sure that we're taking the right precautions. But I'm still in the gym every day. I still go do my outdoor runs. So not too much has changed for me.
And Troy, we'll get into obviously One Championship and your background, but I'm curious because you're in Singapore right now, correct?
Yes, sir.
What is it like there? Just the overall vibe with the coronavirus in Singapore. I mean, it's crazy here. It's crazy everywhere.
Yeah, it never really got too crazy in Singapore. We actually were one of the first places to have cases, and we still have one of the lowest case rates. So I think Singapore is doing a great job at containing the virus. People here are pretty health conscious, and it's, right now there's some people buying extra goods at the stores and stuff, but that's really as far as it goes, as much as the madness. I think a lot of other countries are getting it much worse than we are here.
Have you found yourself, though, buying a little bit more product line, whether it be paper towels, the hand sanitizers, things like that, or has it just been business as usual for you?
Just yesterday, I went and bought some non-perishable goods and stuff like that just because the supermarkets are getting a little low some places, so I just want to make sure we have them. But yeah, I'm not stocked up for 30 days or anything. Nothing. I think Singapore's got a pretty good handle on it, and if they ever did do a lockdown quarantine, probably about 14 days, so not so concerned. I believe in the Singaporean government, and I think we're doing the right things right now.
Troy, how long have you been in Singapore?
A little over a year now. And it's been awesome. At first it was a little crazy for me coming from a small town in Florida and then moving to one of the biggest cities in the world as far as finances and businesses and stuff. So that was a big change. I'd never been on like a MRT or a subway before. So learning the public transportation system and everything here has been a big change. But once I got settled in, it's been a very easy, laid-back going lifestyle. So I love it so far.
And that's interesting because Troy's from Lakeland, Florida. It's outside of the Tampa area, right on I-4. You're traveling east-west I-4, Orlando, Tampa. You'll hit Lakeland. It's a great city, a very religious city as well, very Bible Belt and all. What was it like for you? What was it like for you growing up in Lakeland?
I'm very familiar with the war on I-4, the traffic every day. So, Lakeland's a very small city. I actually live pretty much on the border of Lakeland and Mulberry, which is an even smaller city. I know Mulberry is only known for being phosphate pits. So it's definitely a different vibe. I grew up, small schools. I think my graduating class had like 300 people in it, and I thought that was a lot. So definitely a different lifestyle than what I'm used to here now, but not bad for me. A lot of people think it's too small town vibes. They want to get out as soon as they can, but I didn't mind it. I was ready to stick around in Lakeland if the right opportunities were there, and I might go back one day. I loved Lakeland, and maybe my path will lead me back there one day, and hopefully encourage the youth there and bring the sport of martial arts, mixed martial arts back there, and maybe grow it a little bit, because right now there's not a lot of places to train outside of the gym that I started in, which is Carlson Gracie Lakeland. But hopefully I can bring some more options and some new instruction back there one day.
Worthen, did you make it to the Lakeland Civic Center?
I did. I actually competed in the Lakeland Civic Center for states in wrestling. I'm actually upset that they moved it to Kissimmee, because it had been there every year since the FHSAA wrestling states had started. And I don't know what happened, why they moved it, but, it was kind of historic to compete in the Lakeland Civic Center, and they took that away from us. So hopefully one day it goes back.
Yeah, they always had the basketball tournament there, and they also had, like you said, the high school wrestling state championships there as well. Hey, where did you go to high school?
I went to Mulberry. I actually went to Mulberry because I was on the border, and I was just outside of George Jenkins zoning, so I went to the smaller school in Mulberry.
And then what was it like? Because you said you got to compete in the state tournament. So what was it like? How many times did you compete state high school wrestling championships? And What sports did you play if you played other sports other than wrestling?
I got to compete at states twice. Actually, that's why I credit wrestling a lot for kind of changing my life, is because my freshman year, I was set to go, and I was having one of the best freshman years in school history, but I wasn't the best student. I didn't show up to class a lot, and I had a bad GPA, so I was getting on the bus to go to districts to compete, and they pulled me off and said, you don't have the correct GPA to travel outside of school to compete in sports, so they kicked me off the team right then and there about 2 weeks before the state tournament. So, I decided that I loved wrestling more than all the other activities I was getting into, and so I put my head in the books and got my GPA up and made sure I could compete the next year. So I unfortunately didn't get to make it my freshman year. My sophomore year, I had some injuries and stuff going into the later half of the season, so I didn't quite make it there. But my junior and senior year, I put the right things together. I put the work in, and I made it twice. But outside of that, I pretty much played almost every sport you could think of. I was on the swim team. I did cross country. I played football, JV and varsity. I tried pretty much everything. I did the tryouts for baseball, but not my favorite sport. I would have played soccer, but it overlapped with wrestling. So I was an all-around athlete. It was just wrestling and the one-on-one competitive nature of that just kind of stole my heart, and I stuck with that.
Was Mulberry High School then? You said it was a small graduating class. So did that give you more opportunity to compete in all these different sports because it was a smaller size school?
Yeah, it's definitely a smaller size school, so there's less competitions when you go into other sports like swimming and stuff. I think our entire swimming team was like 12 to 13 people. So definitely more opportunity to compete, but I was a pretty decent athlete. I think I probably would have made those teams regardless, not to toot my own horn too much, but being from a small school, we also didn't have the best funding or, the best coaching available. A lot of the coaches were like, they coached a different sport, but the school needed them to coach a second sport, so they just kind of learned about that sport and tried to teach you it. Like, I think our swim coach was a volleyball coach that just picked up an extra sport throughout the season. So not the best amenities and stuff available, but we got it done, and I never make excuses. I want to compete with the best, so we did what we could.
Well, you ended up falling in love, like you said, with high school, with the wrestling, the amateur wrestling and all. But did you have a passion for football too? Was there something else, another sport that you wanted to try to go into if you get to the college level?
I mean, actually, football was my first love. I grew up watching the NFL, college football. I loved football. I was super passionate about it. I'd play every day in the backyard. I played Little League. It's just, my body decided never to grow big enough. I'm 5'7" and a half on a good day and about 160 pounds. So a little hard to make it in the big leagues that way. And I kind of realized that my second year in high school. Over the summer, I had made the varsity team and I was doing varsity practices. But I was realizing when I was tackling the big guys, it was still hurting my body. So it might not go too well for me in that sport, and decided to focus on wrestling. But I still have a soft spot in my heart for football, and I still love the sport very much. I follow it, but it just wasn't in the cards for me. It wasn't quite big enough.
Well, then wrestling, it lent itself because of the different weight classes, different sizes, so you could be a smaller athlete and excel at it. So that makes it a lot more opportunity-wise as far as, like you said, with size-wise and football. I'm wondering, were you a USF Bulls fan?
No, I wasn't. I was actually a Gators fan. I had no connection or anything, but, Tim Tebow and the greatness that happened in those few years kind of won me over as a kid. I jumped on that bandwagon, and I was a hardcore Gators fan until I decided to attend the University of Central Florida. So now I'm a Knights guy, charge on. So that's me till the end these days. But I was originally a Gators fan, and now the USF Bulls are my hated enemy. So the War on I-4 every year, I'm tuned in.
That's right, the war, like you said, brother, War of I-4, USF versus UCF. That's it.
Yeah, but we've taken that the last couple of years, so I'm super happy about that.
Hey, and that's really cool because you mentioned Tim Tebow and what great years he had and the team had, and then recently UCF football's had some really good years.
Yeah, the last year not so great, but we had some really golden years in between there.
Undefeated seasons and Unofficial national championship too. I always remember
Hey,
seeing the
that's
billboard.
official. That is official. That is in the history books.
Yeah.
We are national champions. We were not given the chance to compete.
Hey, do you follow the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at all? I mean, Tom Brady. Now he looks like he's signing with the Buccaneers. Are you following that at all?
I was never a huge fan of New England, so I don't know how I feel about that. But if he can get them to have a winning season, then I'm all for it.
Yeah, because did you get to go to any Buccaneers games, seeing that you were in Mulberry?
Actually, one of my dad's companies had got us box seats to a Buccaneers game one time, and that was a pretty cool experience. But never really got to go to too many big sporting events when I was a kid. It wasn't in the cards for us. So I went that one time. It was an awesome experience. But I'm looking forward to going and seeing some more live sporting events when I go back to the States.
All right, so Worthen, you made it to the state championships twice. Did you get to place either year?
I placed both years. I placed 5th my junior year, and then 3rd my senior year.
That's awesome, and you did it twice. That's also very cool. Did you compete against, at state, or even at regions or districts for that matter, anybody that ended up going on to MMA, or anyone even in pro wrestling that may have went on? You see a lot of amateur wrestlers also get into WWE and pro wrestling. I'm wondering if you competed against anyone on those levels.
Actually, not that I know of. I honestly don't keep up with too many of the people that I competed with or really knew from high school. A few of my friends have dabbled that were on the wrestling teams into MMA, but I don't know that anybody's taken to the professional level. But if I'm missing out on anybody, I'm sorry. I just don't quite remember. It's been a long time.
Yeah, Troy, you went to UCF. Did you wrestle for UCF, whether they had a wrestling team or a club team?
I did wrestle for UCF's club team, the NCWA. Actually, funny enough, they're the only collegiate league to have national championships this year without canceling it. So I think people are super excited to be a part of that league right now because they're the only people that had a chance to compete in the national championships. And my main training partner while my time at UCF, Clay Perry, just won the national championships at 174. So super happy for him. And they have a great program over at UCF. We were #1 in the nation for quite a few years.
That was cool. How did you do wrestling with them?
Not as well as I would like. I think splitting my time between wrestling and professional MMA kind of hurt my ability to compete at the very, very top. I did All-American, and I had the injury default. Once I got to the All-American round, I had quite a bad neck injury, so I didn't get to compete for the top spots, but I got All-American status, and that was important to me, so I'm happy about that, but I think I could have got a national title had I focused a little bit more.
Troy, you were training and competing in MMA while you were going to UCF?
Yeah, at the same time. I actually made my professional debut in mixed martial arts about 3 months into my wrestling season there. I think I competed in back-to-back tournaments, and then the following weekend made my professional debut. So it was quite a busy time.
Yeah, what was that time like for you? Because you're trying to do your academic studies. You're on the wrestling team at UCF. And by the way, it's club team. So there's different sanctions and different rulings, just to make that clear too, because you were competing professionally. So you want to get that out there. But then also in getting into your debut in MMA and doing that, what was it? Frantic? Was it fun? Was it crazy? Just what was that whole experience during that time like?
Yeah, I mean, actually going to a school that had a club team and not an NCAA team was kind of like a choice that I had to make because NCAA won't let you compete as a professional athlete, and I was looking to make my professional MMA debut, so that helped lead me towards UCF, and I knew they had one of the top teams in the nation, even though it was just a club team. And most of our schedule, we competed with Division I and Division II teams. We just ended up going to a club nationals. So I knew I was still competing with the best people in the world. It was just at a different league that was more accepting to my lifestyle at the time. But it was very hard and very crazy. But if you set big goals, you have to put in big effort, and I was willing to put that effort in. So working a full-time, or I think I was part-time at that point. I was working a part-time job, going to school, competing in wrestling, and competing in MMA. So it was a very crazy time for me, and I put a lot of work in, and very short nights and long days, but brought me to where I am today, so I wouldn't trade it for the world. But yeah, it was very tough times.
Every experience leads to something else if you make a positive out of it, and it seems like you have.
Absolutely.
And it's interesting because, okay, so you're UCF in Orlando, correct? Going to school there. You're working in Orlando as well?
Yes, sir.
Now, you're training in MMA. Is that with Carlson Gracie in Lakeland or no?
No, I actually made the move to train. I actually never trained at one gym when I was in Orlando. I trained at many different gyms, but at that time I was primarily training at Tough as Nails MMA. It's just a small school. It's just like a matted corner in the corner of a CrossFit gym, but good friends and a bunch of good training partners and a great coach there. So I got great training during my time in Orlando there, and I was fortunate to have good connections and good coaches from different areas of Orlando that were willing to work with me, even though I wasn't stuck to one gym. So and I was very fortunate that people in my life at that time were very accepting of me and what I was doing and believed in the dream.
Were you working part-time at Miller's Ale House?
I was not. I was not.
Okay, where were you working?
Part-time at a mental health facility. I was helping people with some special needs, and it put life into perspective for me. You know, every day it's hard to complain about having to work hard when you have people that can't make that choice. You know, they have mental disabilities and stuff like that. So if I'm fully capable, I'm not going to make any excuses, and I'm going to go do what I have to do to achieve my dreams.
Well, that's very interesting, too. What made you decide that? Was that part of the field you were studying in college, or no, that was just something you wanted to do?
You know, I had a friend that was in a higher position there, and he kind of mentioned that it could be a good field for me based on my personality. I do have an interest in psychology. I'd always been super interested in coaching and like helping people, so that worked for me. And also the hours, you know, I could kind of pick and choose each week which days I needed to work and which hours I needed to work. And obviously being a full-time student and athlete, I needed to have a little bit of freedom when it came to my schedule. So some weeks I would work 40 hours and some weeks I'd only work 12 hours. So that gave me a little bit of freedom. And then, you know, being able to help people didn't hurt. I didn't want just a mind-numbing job where I just go in and make pizza every day or something. So it worked out all around for me.
Troy, did you end up finishing up and getting your degree?
I did. I finished my degree. I have a bachelor's in sport and exercise science. And I was actually looking at opening a a strength and conditioning gym at the time when I got the call for coming to Singapore and trying out for the Evolve MMA team. You know, I was thinking about maybe hanging up the gloves professionally and just helping people and becoming a coach and taking a different role, just because I wasn't getting the opportunities I needed to make it financially stable for me. But, you know, Evolve lent their hand out here, and I took it, and now I have a completely different life than I ever expected. But I'm super grateful, and I love what I'm doing right now.
One Championship MMA is about respect, discipline, positive attitude, good athletes, and it's interesting. I'm wondering how much of your story, especially when you mentioned that as a freshman in high school, you became academically ineligible. And instead of going one way, you stepped it up and took it another. And look at you. You're a college graduate, for gosh sakes. How much do you think that played a part in you landing with one championship, too?
I mean, I believe anybody in life, you know, overcoming adversity is what makes you a better person. If you've never overcome adversity in your life, you don't really understand. You can't empathize with struggle. You don't, you know, understand the work necessary to put in to become successful. So I think anybody that's great at anything, they'll have a story similar to mine or maybe worse, you know. I think to build yourself and grow character, you have to overcome some kind of hard situation. So I don't think I'm special in that aspect of it. I think all the athletes at the top level probably have something that went wrong in their life and they had to overcome that. So, you know, I don't want anybody to think that there's any pity needed or anything like that. I just think it's part of life. But, you know, I think it had a big impact on me ending up at one championship, a place where they value character over what you're able to do inside the ring, which I think a lot of people can say stuff like that, but they don't show it. You know, if you look at all the athletes in one championship, there's no, like, media scandals. There's no people getting in bar fights or anything like that. You know, we're all real martial artists we're not just fighters. These people are martial artists. They really live this lifestyle. They're not just doing this for a paycheck or for glory. They're doing it because they're really about this lifestyle, and I'm appreciative to be a part of a company like that. I don't want to go out there to the media and have to present myself as some arrogant person and degrade people just to build my name. That's not what I'm about, and I'm happy that this company is not trying to push that upon me.
That's awesome. Lakeland, Florida's own. That is great. And you have the background in amateur wrestling. Do you also have some other combat sport disciplines that you are trained in?
Right after wrestling, I got into jiu-jitsu as well. So that's part of mixed martial arts. So it's still an everyday journey for me. But I'm very proud of my roots in jiu-jitsu. I come from a small school in Lakeland, like I said, like Carlson Gracie Lakeland. I had a great mentor in Rafa Santos. So he's really the one that built me as an amateur fighter into what I am today. So, very humble beginnings there. But, yeah, I do have a brown belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu as well. I work my Muay Thai every single day with great trainers here at Evolve in Singapore. I had great trainers for striking back home in Orlando. So it's just a culmination of everybody's hard work, and I'm just expressing that. It's not just me. There's a lot of people that enter that ring with me every single time. They're just not there physically, but everybody that's been a part of this journey, I just want to thank them and say I'm very grateful. And maybe I don't say their name as much as I should, or not enough shout outs on social media, but everybody's hand in this journey means a lot to me, truly.
During that journey, Troy, how many fights did you have before you landed in one championship? And then also, how did you get your big break with one championship?
I think I had 4 fights. Yeah, I had 4 fights. I was 4-0 as a professional before I got the call to Evolve MMA. But I had 8 fights as an amateur as well. And actually, I was very inactive as a professional. I think that was 4 fights over like 2 years or 3 years, because I don't know what it is. I don't think I'm a very intimidating person, but I had just long spans of issues getting opponents. People were pulling out of fights. I had one year where I had like 16 to 18 opponent changes and event changes and stuff like that. I just could not get active, no matter what it was. When I was healthy, I couldn't get a fight, and then sometimes I was unhealthy. So it was just unfortunate situations, but it all worked out from the end. But as far as getting into one championship, it was actually the Evolve MMA tryout. It was a part of winning the tryout. You actually got signed to one championship as well as getting signed to Evolve MMA. So it was a 2-in-1 deal for me, and it just made it that much sweeter because I was a part of a great gym now, and then especially being a part of the biggest organization as far as viewership in the world. And like a lot of people think, oh, when are you going to go to the UFC? I'm already in the big leagues. I'm bigger than the UFC right now. We might not be as big worldwide as a brand, but as far as viewership and stuff, our numbers every week are considerably larger.
I think UFC is the one championship of the America, of Canada, of this part of the world, and we're like UFC is the one championship of the Singapore area. I mean, it's like one is ruling one area of the world, and one is ruling the other area of the world. It seems like they're both huge brands.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, go ahead.
The big difference there is the UFC's been in action for about, I think, 27 years, and we've been around since, I think, 2011. So growing very, very fast, and maybe it was 2009, but very fast and expanding to the West soon. So be ready for big things from one championship.
And the other thing also, Troy, did you ever get into pro wrestling as a fan or going to an event or anything like that?
When I was a little kid, I was super into it, and I would argue tooth and nail with my dad every night that it was real, and he was telling me it was fake to turn the channel, it's stupid. But I swore it was real, and I was so into it. I used to love it when I was a kid. We actually saw a few live events at the Lakeland Civic Center. I met the Undertaker live and stuff like that, so I was super into it. But once I realized that it was fake, it just didn't quite have the same pop for me. I'm always... I think that's something that drives me towards MMA, is that it's as real as it gets. There's as little rules as possible. It's one person versus one person locked in a place where you can't escape. It's as real as it gets, and that's always been something that's very thrilling to me. So, the WWE kind of died off in my heart when I found out it was fake. But I still see it on TV every once in a while, and I'll watch an episode.
It's interesting because there's a lot of crossover nowadays between MMA and WWE. It seems like they're going back and forth with some of the talent. So that's why I brought it up too, because I was going to ask you if you think somewhere down the road that might be something you might try as well.
I don't think that'll ever be in the cards for me. I have had some interest in acting. Maybe try out some roles in a TV show or a movie someday when I'm not so focused on winning a world title. But as far as WWE, probably not in the cards for me.
Okay, one last WWE question, because you mentioned The Undertaker. Did you get to see The Undertaker, or you actually got to meet The Undertaker?
He walked by us and shook my hand and said hi, but didn't actually get to hang out with him or anything, so I wouldn't say it was a meeting. But yeah, I saw him, touched him live.
No, that's more than a lot of people, because he doesn't talk much anyway, even off camera. That's awesome.
I can tell you're kind of a WWE fan.
Undertaker's one of the best. I mean, he's one of the ones when you say like a Hulk Hogan, or if you say The Rock, or John Cena, or Undertaker, Stone Cold Steve Austin. A lot of people, even if they're not into pro wrestling or sports entertainment, they know who they are. So it's just great. And then Rock, look what Rock is, even John Cena now, but look what Rock has done with his acting and all. It's just amazing.
Yeah, I mean, The Rock, as far as work ethic and, putting time in to become successful, I think that guy's unmatched, and, he's reaping the benefits of that. But yeah, The Rock was definitely one of my favorites when I was growing up. The Rock and Stone Cold had a few years where they had a little back and forth, and I think that was the golden years of WWE. That's when I was super into it.
I think Rock would have been a great addition to one championship if he ever wanted to go that route, just the way he is. It's just really cool.
He looks in shape. There's still time. I'm sure one would love to sign him.
All right, so let's wrap it up with this. Tell us about One Championship, what's going on with you now, some of your goals, and your latest victory, correct?
Yeah, I just competed February 28th and got a victory, but I'm looking to compete again soon. One Championship is very dedicated to making sure that these events go on, even with the current situation. So we will have events coming up soon. We've had to move around some stuff, but nothing has really been canceled as far as I know. It's just been moving events to make it more doable. I'll probably be competing sometime early in May. One Championship will still be on. People in the United States can download the app or watch on the Bleacher Report Live or TNT. But, we're still going to have events, so anybody that's locked in or anything like that, be sure to follow One Championship, and you can tune in some MMA, especially while the UFC is down right now. I know they canceled 3 events until later in April, so if you guys are looking to find a new brand or something a little bit different taste, make sure to check out One Championship, and look out for me. You can follow me on Instagram at Troy the Fighter Guy, and yeah, that's pretty much it for me.
All right, Troy, and what was it like getting that victory, though? I mean, when you look back at that journey, and that journey is still continuing now, but what was it like that night and being able to come out on top like that?
It's amazing every time. I love to compete, whether it's in front of 2 people or in front of 10,000 people. My love is in competition in martial arts, so the audience base, none of that really changes it for me, but it is very sweet to be able to do it on a global stage. And I'll say there's no rush in the world like it. I think that's why MMA fighters have such a hard time walking away from the sport, is just because there's just no adrenaline rush like that. You can do whatever you want in the world, but I promise you'll never get the same feeling as competing in a One Championship arena.
And that's awesome. And let me just add this too, Troy. You said you love it whether you're competing in front of 2 people or 10,000 people. That's what WWE stands for. You're made for WWE. I'm telling you, that could be another thing for you. Later on down the road, you want to do the acting chops. You do a little bit of, you got the amateur wrestling background, Brock Lesnar. I mean, look at these guys, Bobby Lashley. You look at Cain Velasquez jumping in there. I mean, look at these guys. They're all getting in there, Troy. We might see you in there, Troy. We might see you.
Maybe one day we'll give it a shot. We'll see.
Troy, thank you so much for your time. Keep doing what you're doing, One Championship, and everything else that's going positive in your life.
Thank you so much. Have a good day, man.